Outlaw, a KXAN investigative project. Our team is looking at the connection between a 50-year-old state law banning homosexual conduct and the record number of legislative proposals introduced in 2023 impacting LGBTQ+ Texans. The debate surrounding many of those bills focused on children and families. Some passed into law, some are challenged in court, and others are bound to resurface in future sessions. Limits on children viewing sexually explicit performances, which some worry could include drag shows, became law in at least 5 states this year, including Texas, according to the ACLU. Of those, Montana is the only one to specifically bar schools and libraries from holding a drag story time. Teachers and librarians there could also face a $5,000 fine for violating this law and possibly have their credentials revoked. KXAN's Will Dupree looks closer at what happened when Texas tried something similar and whether it will again.
Ready? The shoulders on the drag queen go shimmy, 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 all through the town. I like the baby shimmies. Those are cute.
Keeping a crowd's attention comes easily.
Does anybody know what a drag queen is?
When you're Bridget Bandit.
What's a drag queen? You. Me!
She looks like she stepped off the page of the picture book she's reading to this room of families.
The hair on the drag queen goes up, 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 up.
Invitations keep coming her way to lead these story times.
Being around kids is so much fun, and I see their excitement and joy in their faces when they see somebody who looks as bright and bubbly and colorful as I do.
She defended these reading events for kids.
Look at them and all their little blushing cheeks.
When she went in the same sparkly pink dress and wig to the state capitol during the last regular legislative session.
None of us want to have children at our drag shows at the gay bar at 11 p.m. on a Friday night. And there are already laws preventing that from happening, but we do want to continue our events like drag story times that are intentionally modified to be appropriate for children.
The legislation she spoke against that day, Senate Bill 1601, sought to strip state funding from any public library in Texas that held a drag story time. Some in attendance expressed support for creating such a consequence.
There is no debate that this is highly inappropriate for children.
These shows are not Mrs. Doubtfire innocently reading fairy tales to children.
However, the opponents who testified outnumbered the bill's supporters by nearly 50-1 and often returned to the Capitol to demonstrate.
We're Texans too!
We are, we are, we are!
The Senate passed that bill. Its author, Republican Senator Brian Hughes, repeatedly cited one example as justification.
We've learned that certain libraries in the Houston Public Library System used to host these story hours until they were alerted by the public that one of the participants was a registered sex offender.
That incident in question happened in 2019. The Houston Public Library admitted it did not do enough to check that performer's background. While the library system declined our request for an interview, a spokesperson confirmed its programs today do not include any drag queen story times. The library further added it condemns social inequity in all forms and steadfastly supports the freedom of speech and freedom of expression.
It's unfortunate that the library didn't do their due diligence before hiring any vendor to come into their space, whether they're working with kids or not.
Jonathan Hamelt leads the national children's literacy nonprofit Drag Story Hour, which has 30 chapters across the U.S. The organization had no involvement with what happened in Houston, but Hamelt points out every one of its storytellers must clear a background check first. Recently, laws passed in Arkansas and Florida led Drag Story Hour to close its chapters there. Texas has 2 chapters.
We're keeping a close eye on what's happening and how we can support our chapters to keep going.
His nonprofit is maintaining its Texas ties, partly because of what happened to SB 1601. The Texas House never took up the measure, so it did not become law. Senator Hughes did not respond to our request about whether he'll revive it next session.
Our entire third floor is just for kids and teens.
And that's what the people who work at Austin Public Library are watching closely.
If other similar legislation, or really any legislation, came up that targeted the freedom to read, intellectual freedom, public libraries, Austin Public Library and the City of Austin are going to continue to monitor what comes out of the legislature and speak up when necessary.
One law Texas did pass this year was Senate Bill 12. Its language did not include the word drag, but critics say how it described a sexually oriented performance could be interpreted that way.
A minor seeing that kind of performance could result in fines against a business and possible criminal charges for a performer. Bridget Bandit and 4 other plaintiffs sued the Texas Attorney General and other officials to keep them from enforcing this law. A federal judge agreed with their arguments and ruled the law unconstitutional. The state now did appeal that decision, and it could be a while before we know the final outcome.
All right, legal pushback is also happening in other states, right?
That is true. For instance, that law we mentioned earlier regarding drag storytime events in Montana is also tied up in the courts.